Why should I sell to a wholesaler for less than market or to a dealer? I don't understand why I should do that and take the loss when there's people out there that want it for more. I just don't get it. All right, so let's talk about why you as a seller might have a hard time getting the value you think you deserve for your timepiece. I have the Rolex Pepsi right here. This was recently discontinued, and if you would have looked for this piece a day after it was discontinued, you might have seen this 2025 like new condition complete Pepsi Jubilee listed for anywhere from $32,000 to $38,000. That was the implied value at the time. And there was a sense of scarcity to it because it was discontinued. Now, when you think about a listing price, that's all it is. It's an ask. You also have to consider that there's a buy price. This is what people are willing to pay for your timepiece. So yes, the reality is that if your ask is 38, there may be a buyer willing to pay that. But the majority might be sitting somewhere around 27. Gradually, what's going to happen is that listing is going to sit. Maybe one will sell, but then it starts dropping until those meet a happy medium. So your ask might drop down to 32. Meanwhile, the buy might jump up to 28. And then they're going to find, a few that might be going to 29, a few sellers that might be going down to 31, and they're getting close to each other. So that's when they start negotiating. Maybe they reach a deal around 30. So for the next month, 30 is kind of the number. You're seeing these 2025 like new Pepsi Rolex on Jubilee going around 30,000. Well, gradually the reality is that there's still folks sitting as a buy price of 26, 27. And when we run out of buyers at the ask price, we're going to have to find a way to meet. I'm not going to sit on a watch, so I'm going to lower my price to 29. Maybe the buyers go up to 27. And we're going to settle right around, say, 28, 28.5. As a dealer, I'm also a wholesaler. All dealers try to buy at wholesale, and that way they can turn either one, to a retail client for their maximum profit, or two, to another dealer, because if I don't have a client, I'm looking for somebody with a client. And I'm going to maybe list this at 27.5, but if a dealer comes to me saying they have a client, we may be able to find a middle ground where we both win. Let's say I buy this watch for 25 wholesale, 24.5. Let's say 24.5, because that's actually what I got this for. That if I find a retail client, I'm going to make $3,000 on this watch. But that's just the business I'm in. But I'm also taking on a level of liability. I advertise this in like new condition, keeps good time, etc. I'm liable to make sure that it meets that criteria. Now, let's say someone runs a serial check on this and it turns out that this Pepsi is actually a 2020 and the card was washed and marked for 2025. And maybe this originally came on an oyster bracelet and somebody put on a Jubilee. While authentic, this is a authentic Rolex Pepsi, authentic Jubilee, but didn't originally come on Jubilee. For a collector, that's going to be important. On top of that, if the card is dated 2020 or 2025 and it comes back serial check 2020, that's a lot of value lost. Most likely what's going to happen is I'm going to get this piece returned to me and I'm going to have to pay the full refund. Now I'm sitting on a timepiece that's a 2020 with a authentic but not original Jubilee band. Now, if I bought this from another dealer, they would be liable, and then I would go to them and I would try to seek the same reimbursements. Like in this case, I got it from a client that is not in the watch business, does not have any representation of themselves in the watch business. It's going to be very difficult for me to hold them liable for this piece. As the dealer that bought it, I'm buying it at, say, 24.5, assuming that liability. I'm assuming the liability that everything checks. Now, I should do my due diligence. I should do a serial check, and I should make sure that everything is legit. If I don't do that, I'm accountable to that. Most dealers are going to stand by their product, and they're going to, I don't want to risk losing my reputation in this industry, so I'm just going to make it right. For me to sell to a retail client, I might make $3,000 margins. 27.5 might be the retail market price. But the reality is if I don't have a client on the ready, I'm more than likely going to sell to another dealer with a client ready to buy. Say they don't have this piece and they're looking for this piece. They see my listing at 27.5. hey, I've got a client for this, but they want in at 27.5, and it's not really worth it for them to buy at 27.5 to sell 27.5, so they might offer me 26.5. They make 1,000, I bought it for 24.5, so I make 2,000. The reality, maybe they go even lower to 26 and we meet in the middle, 1,500 profit each. But again, we still assume that liability. So I sell it to that dealer sells it to their client. Let's say they find out that there's an issue or it's not keeping good time. They're going to go back to the dealer they bought from and they're going to make them right. Well, that dealer in turn is going to come to me and I'm going to make them right. So that liability continues to transfer. As a business owner in this industry, reputation is everything. So I am owning that liability not just to the next buyer, but beyond. And if it can trace back all the way to me, I'm going to be still holding liability towards this timepiece. So that's what's important to understand. If you're somebody who inherited a watch or maybe treated yourself one time, realizes your family, we could really use the money right now. I need to sell this piece. I see them being listed at 27.5. You might be getting frustrated when you can't sell yours at 27. Well, one, you don't have the client base. Two, you don't have the reputation. You haven't built a level of trust. You don't have reviews. You don't have people that will vouch for you. It's going to be very difficult to find the trust for a retail client to come through you because there's an abundance of these available. And most people are going to rather pay a little bit extra to work with somebody who is going to have that sense of liability, a business that has a reputation that's backed by reviews and vouches and people that represent them well. They're going to pay a little bit more to know that they get that. It's kind of like working with a car dealership. That dealer is a business. They stand by their product. They do a full inspection of that vehicle. Hopefully they're doing good business. Now there are shady businesses out there, just like there might be some shady watch dealers out there. But ultimately, those reviews and that reputation are going to speak volumes towards that dealership that you can feel confident in buying, knowing that they've done all their quality checks and are providing you with a good product that's as advertised. If you go to an individual, they might not know cars. They might not know that there's an engine issue that might be starting to arise. Just like an individual selling a timepiece. They might not know that this is, originally came on Oyster bracelet. They might not know how to tell if this dial has been swapped. So they're selling to you in good conscience, thinking they're giving you a good product, but then there's something that goes wrong. Well, it's going to be very hard for you to get anything back because they're an individual. Who are you going to go after? What are you going to go after? Their reputation? They don't have a reputation in the industry. So you kind of just need to change your perspective. If you're an individual that, isn't necessarily in the watch industry but has a nice timepiece, be realistic about your expectations for what you can sell for. You might think that you don't want to sell to a wholesaler or a dealer because you're getting lowballed. But think less about it being lowballed and more about it being the value that wholesaler or dealer needs to have to obtain that liability. So you're selling, ultimately the seller who sold me this for $24.5 is getting quick cash. So they're getting a premium for a luxury timepiece, but I'm assuming all liabilities here forward. So it's just important to really understand and recognize what market value is. One, there's an ask and a buy. Just because people are listing it at a price doesn't mean it's selling at that price. So don't get caught up in that. If you go to places like Chrono24, there's seller fees. So what the seller is actually getting is less than what they're listing it at. So don't think just because, the majority of sellers are listing this at 27 that the sellers are getting 27. So it's just understanding kind of, what you're actually getting, what you're transferring, what your expectations should be. The way I handle this business is, when I'm working with a client that wants to sell a timepiece, I'm going to try to be as fair as possible. I'm going to let them know clear as day. I'm going to give them the market value based on today's statistics. I'm going to say, this is what it's selling for in Chrono. But you got to understand the seller fees are this, therefore this is what the seller is going to get. Look at the most recent closings on Grailsy. This is what it sold for. Let's look at Marketplace, and this is what, these watches are being listed for. So the reality is that if I find the right retail client, I can get $27.5 for your watch. And you might think that, fair would be 26, but I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to say, all right, but if I don't have a client ready to buy, I'm likely going to sell to another dealer. That other dealer is going to want this for 26 or 26.5. But the 24.5, again, is me assuming liability, taking on this timepiece, providing you quick cash, within 24 hours. And then I am getting a timepiece that I have the potential to make profit on, but also I have to understand that sense of liability now rests on me. So just for an understanding, manage your expectations. Don't think about it as if you work with a dealer or a wholesaler that you're getting lowballed. Think of it as an insurance. You're getting quick cash that nobody's going to try to recoup from you later. Because once I take on the piece, I've done my due diligence to make sure everything matches and is legitimate to my standard, and then I hold all liability from there forward.